We heard the Prime Minister at 10 a.m. in the morning. We understand the inevitability of the lockdown, and therefore the Indian National Congress supports it, since this is a decision on which there is a broad agreement between the center and all the states. In fact, some of the state governments have already gone ahead and enforced the lockdown even before the Prime Minister came on air today in their respective states. However, there are a couple of things which are extremely germane, which we need to point out. The Prime Minister told the nation what he expects out of the people. But the Prime Minister did not address the concerns of the people, or did not talk about what the people want to hear that the government is doing. If I can repeat that again, the Prime Minister during his speech spelled out what he expects the people of India to do. What he did not spell out is what his government is doing for the people of India. And that is our fundamental observation with regard to the address today in the morning. A lockdown primarily has two purposes. The first is to stop the spread of the disease, COVID-19, going by all the scientific evidence available, as a 14-day incubation cycle. So essentially, from the 24th of March till the 3rd of May, if you are going to have a 41-day lockdown, you are going through 3 incubation cycles of the virus. And so therefore, if that is the epidemiological advice which the Prime Minister has received, that is understandable. But what the Prime Minister has not spoken about, and were the most horrifying images when this lockdown was implemented in the first place, beginning the 24th of March, is with regard to the plight of the migrant workers. All of you would recall as to how migrant workers in droves tried to get back to their homes and hearth in the countryside, how they have been stopped, quarantined on the borders of various states. They are in camps which are spread out across various parts of the country. Now, the first question is that those migrants, most of them, have completed their mandatory 14-day quarantine. So, therefore, what are you going to do about them? Are you going to allow them to go back to their home and hearth? Is there a calibrated plan as to permitting them or facilitating their travel? Because essentially, if someone has gone through the mandatory 14-day quarantine period and is negative as far as COVID-19 symptoms are concerned, we would like to ask the government, doesn't it become your responsibility then to facilitate his return, or his or her return, or the return of that family to their respective homes, wherever they are in the country? So that's the first thing which we expected the Prime Minister to address. That what does his government intend doing, or what do governments intend doing with regard to these millions of migrants who are stuck on various borders of various states across the country? The second thing which we did not hear from the Prime Minister is with regard to testing. Now, even now, there is no vaccine which is available. We still seem to be fairly far away from developing a vaccine which can be used. at a mass level. And so, therefore, the only medical treatment that is available is preemption and prevention. And for preemption and prevention, what you require is a proliferation of testing, you require mass testing. What we've not heard from the Prime Minister is what is the strategy of this government with regard to testing. So, if is the testing only going to be confined to hotspots, or is there going to be community level screening as it had happened in Bhilwara, which is then going to be followed up with testing? So, there, what is the strategy of this government, or what is the unified strategy which has been evolved in consultation with the state governments with regard to testing? The third thing that we have not heard is our frontline workers who are battling COVID 19, the nurses, the doctors, the paramedical staff, our municipal workers. What is the status with regard to procurement of personal protection equipment? After all, if they are in the front line, they deserve to be protected. Merely saying that we have enough stock of everything is not going to resolve the issue. What this country wanted to hear from the Prime Minister was that in the past 21 days that we have gone through this lockdown, what have you done to augment your capacity with regard to the procurement and the availability of personal protection equipment? The third thing is, what is the roadmap for harvesting? We have the Rabi crop, which is there in the fields. You have combined harvesters, which are stuck on the borders of Madhya Pradesh, in Uttarakhand, which are required back in Western UP, in Haryana, in Punjab, where the bulk of the harvesting has to take place. So, what is the government's roadmap insofar as harvesting is concerned? I mean, how are you going to really allow people from the villages to go out into the fields, carry out the harvest? How is that harvest really going to be then collected and taken to procurement centers? And how is that procurement going to be facilitated? And would the government be paying a, 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 a bonus or a support over and above the minimum support price? The farmers of this country wanted to hear that from the Prime Minister. The fourth is that what about the marginalized, the poor, the most vulnerable sections of society? Manrega jobs are at 1% of what they were in March and February of 2020. There are only there's only 1.9 lakh families who've been able to get work under Manrega in the month of April 2020, as opposed to 1.6 crore in March and 1.8 crores in February. So therefore, Manrega employment is down to 1% of what it was 2 months back. What is the government's strategy to deal with it? Would the government be giving full wages to all those people who have active job cards under Manrega? Something which is imperative, something which is essential in order to keep their body and soul together, something which every right thinking person, including the Congress party, has been demanding now for a long time. Then how are supply chains going to be restored? We've not heard from the Prime Minister that what is the strategy to keep supply chains up and running. Already across our cities, prices have started going up. The shopkeepers are complaining that they are not getting adequate stock. Black marketing and hoarding is going on. What is the government strategy to deal with it? Then, what about action against employers who are sacking their staff? Ministry of Labor in March had written a letter to all employers across the country. Prime Minister has appealed twice, once in his earlier address, once today, that no employer should sack his workers at this point in time. We require compassion. But all of you are aware what is happening. What's happening in your own industry, in the media industry itself. Will the government take action against those employers who, in this time of need, in this time of destitution, are really looking at their bottom lines rather than at the stomachs of their employees? How is the government going to deal with those employers? Then, what about extension of rations till 30th of September 2020 to those who have cards under the National Food Security Act, something which the Honorable Congress President flagged yesterday? What about rations to those people who are internal migrants who do not have ration cards? How are you going to ensure that food reaches all these people? So, therefore, there are extremely, extremely valid concerns beyond the larger question of the revival of the economy that the Prime Minister needed to address. The Prime Minister needed to tell the country that these are the 15 things that we have done in